This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, this is a Makoim Noira. This is the Kever, Rabbi Yitzchak, Eizik, Yehuda, Yechiel of Komarna, the son of Rabbi Alexander. Now, very important to know, we were at the Kever of Rabbi Alexander. When we were there? 2 days ago in Uel. Rabbi Alexander was close with the Yismach Moshe. He went to visit the Yismach Moshe, and at age 47, Rabbi Alexander, by the way, Alexander is the brother of the Zidichover, Rabbi Tzvi Hersh of Zidichov. And Rabbi Alexander was niftar at age 47, and again, Rabbi Yitzchak Eizik grew up basically as a Yasoim, and he was raised by the Zidichover, his uncle. Now, he was one of the all-time Bekiyim in the Zohar HaKadosh. He wrote the Parsha on the Zohar called Zohar Chai. There's a classic Parsha on the Zohar. Zohar Chai was written by the Komarna, as it says on the Kever. Nehirin le shvile de rakia, kishvile de neherda. They say about Shmuel, shvilin le nehirin de rakia, kishvile de neherda. But he writes de nahar deya. That's a play on words. Rabbi Yitzchak Eizik wrote many chiburim. He wrote Asiros Ha'efa on Torah's Kohanim, and he writes in his Hakdama. By the way, he got a haskama on the Asir Sefer from none other than the Yismach Moshe himself. He writes in Akdama to the Sefer Nesiv Mitzvah, let nobody choshid me that I'm just writing Svarim. Some people, they write Svarim just to write Svarim, you know. I'm not writing Svarim to write Svarim. I'm writing Svarim to be Mesake in my nefesh. There's a fire in my soul, and I need to return my soul to its source. And one of the shilas they're going to ask in Shemayim is, Torah's Koyanim Shanisa, did you learn Torah's Koyanim? And I need to be able to answer in the affirmative, and I needed to explain it, so I explained the Torah's Kohanim very carefully. In the Hakdama, by the way, Tzvi Hersh, as a young man, had the ability to see into the future. And Rabbi Yitzchak Eizik had the ability to see in the future, but his uncle took it away from him. He said, not yet. He only gave it back to him toward the end of his life. He says that his Perush on the Tosefta, he wrote a Perush on the Tosefta called Nasei Oireg. It's miyusad on Rabbi Eliyahu of Vilna, the Vilna Gaon, and he writes about the Vilna Gaon. Nobody since the Rambam understood the Bavli and the Yishalmi like the Gaon. That's what he writes. He also wrote a Perush called Heichal Bracha, and he writes like this. This he writes in one of his Svarim. He says, in the winter, he stayed up, it was freezing. He said even in the oven, it was freezing. It was not even warm once. And he would stay up every night from Chatzos until morning. And he says that he was not even margish the cold from his dveikus. And he says, Lo yisi margish me'roiv ora Torah sheta'amti me'ora yisbarach. Now this is a pella, listen to this one. He says in the Sefer, it says in the Sefer Megillah Sasarim, that one time he was in the middle of learning which Masechta? Yevamis. He was once in the middle of learning Yevamis. And all of a sudden he was overcome by a great light. The whole house filled up of light. The Hashras Hashchina. This was the first time he had this divine revelation. And from then on, he was able to be nichnas into the gateways of Avodas Hashem through this great Hiskalos Hashchina. He had learning Masechta Yevamis. Now, during his final machala, even though he was falling very ill, he did not want to lose out on being Mekabel Malchus Shamayim, so they gave him the tefillin, and he didn't let anyone else put on him. He put on the Rashi tefillin, he put on the Rabbeinu Tam tefillin, he had to go into the bed, he says Mincha, he's going to daven ba'olam hazeh, and Marav, yet he'll be being mispalel in the olam ha'emes. So he wrote Asira Sa'if on Torah's Kohanim, Nesiv Mitzvah, he wrote a Perush on Chumash and Rashi, Heichal Bracha. He wrote Noitzer Chesed on Avos, and he wrote Zohar Chai. Ramazim Neflam, amazing Ramazim. His father, Rabbi Alexander, we were zeichet to be at his kever right next to the Yismach Moshe, and Bezos Hashem, after the trip, we'll add some more information about Rabbi Alexander, his father, the brother of Tzvi Hersh of Zidichov. And here we have the kfarim of other Rabbanim in Komarna. Now his last name was Saferin. But that was the name of the city his father came from. His father's name was Eichenstein, because Zidichov is Eichenstein. The name was Eichenstein, the city was Saferin. But all the Komarnas took on the name Saferin. All the tefillah should be in Istabel.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.